Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of the Inside Track. I've got Scottish Sun tipster Jim Delahunt here with me. We're going to go through the races at Haydock. The Betfair Chase is the main event there, as well as Ascot, Punchestown over the weekend. Some good Grade 1 action. I think, first of all, Jim, you'd hit the crossbar a couple of times, a couple of winners at Cheltenham last week. What was your thoughts on your bets?
Yeah, we had a couple of short price winners, one of which I'll mention later on, Doan Quest, because that's running tomorrow, Saturday. But the two main bets, of course, that we focused on last week were Dysart Enos, that was in the Greatwood Hurdle, and also Galaw, which was in the Paddy Power Gold Cup. Galaw, I thought, ran a really solid race. I don't think we could complain about the way that Gavin Sheehan rode the horse that day. Stayed on really, really well. Il Ridotto was just a better handicapped horse on the day, was given a fantastic ride. I think everyone agrees by Freddie Gingle. So no complaints about Galaw. He ran a solid race. He certainly enhanced his Cheltenham form, which we were raving about beforehand. Dysart Enos, well, she was very short, which was disappointing. I actually thought she was short of a run as well, short of a gallop. She ran just to me as if she needed the race. She finished third. It was a solid effort behind a couple of horses which are going to go into better things. But I suspect that come the spring we'll be looking at 2.5 miles for Dysart Enos, and I think the Mayor's Hurdle is going to be just right up her street. She's a 12-1 chance for the Mayor's Hurdle at the moment. That's not bad value at all. She's 100-1 for the Champion. I don't think they'll go down the Champion Hurdle route. 12-1 for the Mayor's Hurdle seems like a much more realistic prospect. And I think once she stepped up to 2.5 miles, and she's got that real good blow out of the way last weekend. Remember, she'd missed Cheltenham, she'd missed Aintree, she'd been declared on both days, but missed both races. So it was a first run back for a long time. I thought she ran as if she was a mare that needed that race. I think she'll improve an absolute ton for it. And longer term, as I say, I think the Mayor's Hurdle, 2.5 miles in March is the way to go.
You put up Luda S last weekend, who won very impressively. What was your take on him? Can you see him being a contender come March?
Yeah, I was very impressed with that. Absolutely delighted with the ride that Harry Skelton gave that horse as well. That's definitely a contender come March, isn't it? It's definitely going to be in the mix for whichever Grade 1 route Dan and Harry decide to go down. And I thought the other one that we mentioned earlier, Doan Quest, I thought that one really, really well for the Skeltons last week. I tipped a treble. We only managed two, but I thought Doan Quest ran a really good race, and that comes out again this weekend under a £5 penalty, which again we'll come to after the big one at Haydock.
Yeah, well, the Betfair Chase is the main event on Haydock's card. The weather's going to be a bit of an unknown. I mean, it's the forecast is for it to be quite wet over the next 24 hours. How do you think that would shake things up if the rain does come?
Yeah, Robert, it's the big unknown. It's the really big unknown for this 3 mile chase at Haydock on Saturday, the Betfair Chase. It's worth £200,000. It's been the target, as you know, all season for a Hoy Senior trained by Lucinda Russell, ably assisted, of course, by Peter Scudamore, who does a lot of the talking around this horse, and some fascinating analogies about cricket coming out last week, which I think we'll ignore in this particular broadcast. Hoy Senior, is he going to be as effective on soft ground? The suspicion is no, but I think we've both seen weather forecasts for Haydock this weekend, and we're not quite sure how the ground's going to turn up. So let's assume, for the sake of argument, it's going to be good to soft. It's going to be a level playing field for everybody. It's going to be good to soft. Ahoy Senior had that run at Aintree last time, which was an interesting run in the sense that it very much attracted the attention of the stewards. There's no way to talk round about this. The stewards had a look at that. They pulled the jockey in, Derek Fox. He obviously talked a very good game. He explained what his riding instructions were. Those riding instructions were backed up by Peter Scudamore / Lucinda Russell. And the stewards noted the explanation given for the way that horse was ridden on that day at Aintree. Right, let's have a look at this. It was a handicap. He was carrying top weight and a handicap. He was giving an awful lot of weight away. And Peter and Lucinda decided before the race that they were going to change the tactics. They were going to, instead of an up front with that horse, they were going to hold it up at the back. I thought visually it didn't look very good how far back he was held up by Derek Fox. And by the time he did start to make up his ground, it was far too late. And I think they probably dodged a bullet there because the stewards could have been harsher. Anyway, the explanation was noted. The tactics are now the tactics going forward. So we're going to be very, very surprised if those tactics aren't repeated at Haydock on Saturday. because they've set their stall out with these tactics now. The problem with me is I don't think he can afford to get that far back in a Grade 1. So I'm going to use some of my own experience here, because way back 3 stone ago, Robert, I used to ride out. And I used to remember going to a work morning on a Saturday, and if you were down to ride a particular horse called Mr. West Sound, it was one of the highlights of your week, because it meant you could play jockeys. You could sit out the back, crawl up to the leaders and put his head in front right on the line. Now, sometimes if you were 10, 20 yards too far back, Mr. West Sound lost interest. And I think that's all part of the herd mentality with racehorses, that they don't want to be too far back. I think if Derek sits way too far out of his ground in a Grade 1 on Saturday, that could disappoint the horse, and he might start making those jumping errors, which Peter Scudamore and Lucinda Russell have been trying to eradicate. So I hope he doesn't sit so far out of his ground as he did at Aintree. I hope he sits close enough up that he will be able to mount a challenge, because I think you and I agree he's good enough to mount a challenge, and he's probably good enough to win this race. What do you think yourself?
Well, I think he's kind of a bit of a misunderstood horse. I think you've got to look at Hoy Senior in terms of his background. He didn't come through one of the big Irish point-to-point academies, who these guys are effectively professional trainers. Their business model is to get these horses young, teach them to jump, teach them to run, get them into these ultra-competitive Irish point-to-points, and then sell them for good money. That's where a lot of the top horses come from. Also, they come from France, where they jump as 3-year-olds. Hoy Senior didn't come from that background. He come from the English pointing scene, which, with the greatest of respect, is very sort of low-grade, weak stuff. Yeah. He also didn't reach the track till he was 6 years of age, which is very, very late for a horse these days to get to the track. So I think Lucinda and Screw have had to educate this horse on the track. And because of what he did winning the Sefton and ended up rated 152, they were very limited in where they could run him. And he's had to do his learning on the track in the white heat of graded company. And he's made a lot of mistakes over his career. But there's a big deficit in his bank of experience. If you look at the last 4 winners of this race, and this is a very interesting comparison to where a Hoy Senior is in his career and has been in his career. A Hoy Senior raced first on the track at the age of 6. Royal Pagaille, who won the race last year, was jumping as a 3-year-old. By the time he was 6, he'd had 10 runs. Protectorat, the year before, jumping in France as a 3-year-old, had 11 runs by the time he was 6. A Plus Tard, same scenario, 12 runs by the time he was 6. Bristol de Mai, who loved this race, 17 runs by the time he was 6. So you could make an argument that this horse, although he's been out in novice company for a couple of years now, is actually, in terms of his racing experience, has been a novice until probably this year. He's now had 23 runs. This year could be his year, although it's counterintuitive, because 9 rising 10, you tend to think, oh, the legs will start going, the younger horses will be better. Yeah. But in terms of experience, he's now got the bank of experience you need to compete at this level and compete with the peers that he's got.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Sefton. The Sefton, of course, is a Grade 1 novices hurdle at Aintree, which comes after Cheltenham. He went to that race off the back of winning a maiden at Ayr. And he won that race. It was, I think he was 33-1 without having the phone book in front of me, Robert. I think he was a huge price that day. What was he?
66.
66. I knew he was a huge outsider. So it was a shock to most people that he won that Grade 1. He then went straight over fences, having won a Grade 1 hurdle at Aintree, a maiden hurdle at Ayr, straight back over fences, which he'd done in minor point-to-points before. He unseated rider on his first race at Carlisle, but he's only actually fallen once since, and that's when he was absolutely cruising in the Gold Cup 2 years ago. So the jumping maybe isn't as bad as people say, but Peter Scudamore and Lucinda have decided that the way to improve that jumping is to hold him up. So let's see if these tactics work. I suspect they will. I think you do too. I think 5-1, 6-1 in this race on Saturday is a really good price. And I headlined the Hoy Senior in the column on Thursday, the inside track column in the Scottish Sun on Thursday, and I'll be standing by that on Saturday. I think he's got a really tremendous chance of winning that Betfair Chase.
Thanks, Jim. And we start off at Haydock with a Grade 2 novice hurdle as well. I believe you've got a fancy in that one.
Yeah, I do, and it's I'm mentioning Airform again because Country Mile was a winner for Dan Skelton and Harry Skelton when they had a treble at Ayr. Just a few weeks ago, and Country Mile I thought won really, really well that day. He didn't beat anything, Robert, absolutely nothing, but he won really, really well. He previously won a bumper at Huntingdon, so they did think a lot of this horse. They came up to Ayr, won an egg and spoon race, if we're being perfectly honest. But I think the horse is capable of stepping up. They're into a Grade 2, this Newton Novices Hurdle at Haydock, which kicks off the Betfair Chase card on Saturday, 8 minutes past 12. I think it's good enough to win this, going straight from a maiden at Ayr to winning this Grade 2. I think we have to mention the fact that Lucinda Russell was second in that race, and she takes Country Mile on with both Bold Light and Rocheval. So they maybe think they've got the measure of the horse. I'm not so sure. And also Nicky Richards runs a horse called Saracen Bow, which also won a novice hurdle at Ayr, might even have been a maiden. Won that at Ayr just 3 weeks ago, and he thinks a lot of Saracen Bow. So you have to respect the opposition, but I think Country Mile, you have to build in the skeleton factor. It's going to be a shorter price than it probably should be, but I think Country Mile's good enough to win the opener and get us off to a winning start on Saturday.
And then there's at the 115, there's a ultra competitive handicap hurdle, which Beat the Bat is the favourite, which got form tied in with Dysart Enos, who we know for last week that you really like. But it's another one in the race you fancy, I believe.
Yeah, Beat the Bat. I mean, there's no debating Beat the Bat's form, Robert. Absolutely right that horse is going to go off favourite, most probably. Harry Fry and Brian Carver, his new jockey that he's been talking a lot about in the racing press this week. But Cam Sinas it's another Fergal O'Brien one. We're going down that road again. But Cam Sinas won very well at Aintree. Was entered in the two races, the two handicap hurdles at Haydock on Saturday. This race at 1:15, which is over 2 mile and 3. And he was also entered in the 3 mile half a furlong race at 2:30. They've decided to avoid Doan Quest in that race over the 3 miles. They've come back for the 2 miles 3. He was fine over 2.5 at Aintree. I think he's still on the upgrade. And I think Camsinas, don't let 11 stone 12 put you off on Saturday. I think Camsinas is a very good horse going forward. And he might just be good enough to win this handicap off very close to top weight, Robert.
Then there's a very, very interesting graduation chase where we've got Tamuras, who won in this card, actually won the Newton 2 years ago up against the Rocco. Do you see that as a betting race, Jim, or is that more one for getting a few pointers towards for the tail end of the season?
Yeah, the phrase I like to use, rather boringly, is look and learn. I think this is a look and learn race. It's a graduation chase over 2 mile 5. Tamuras is very highly regarded by Paul Nicholls. Johnny Burke takes the ride. I think it's in the same ownership as Camsinas. I'd have to check that. But Iroko is the very interesting one. The other one I wanted to mention, because this is the horse that they're touting as a Grand National horse this year. Oliver Greenall and Josh Guerriero. It'll run in the JP McManus colours. Of course, he unleashed a really smart novice hurdler at Newbury during the week under Nico de Boinville for Nicky Henderson. But back to the chasing, Iroko is the one they think going forward for the Grand National. I think it's going to be a really fascinating contest between the two, but no betting boots on for this one, Robert.
Yeah. And will you be going back in on your beloved Doan Quest later on at 2:30 then?
Yeah, thought it won really well last week. Can't see a £5 penalty stopping it. Didn't really have too hard a race at all last week. The Skeltons know what they're doing. They've got other horses in that race at 2:30. They've got, what have they got in? They've got Catch'em Derry, which is actually a progressive hurdler in its own right. I wouldn't be surprised if that came out and won a big handicap in the not too distant future. And they've also got Gwenny May Boy, which is on a 4-timer under Charlie Todd in this race as well. But I don't think there was ever any doubt that Harry was going to get back on Doan Quest, and a £5 penalty I can't see stopping him in the 2:30 at Haydock on Saturday.
Ascot race this afternoon, but they've also got a nice card tomorrow. There's a Berkshire National, a bit of a slog, and there's one in that you fancy you maybe spotted last week.
Yeah, there's so many variations of nationals these days, Robert. But the interesting thing about this selection, Slipway, is that he's won 2 already. He's won the Southern National at Fontwell, which is a real 3 mile 3 furlong slog, and he's also won the Highland National at Perth. Trained by Ben Pauling. I watched it run in the cross-country race last week. I thought it ran a really, really nice race. Back over regulation fences, 3 mile 5.5 furlong. The word is Ascot will get very soft on Saturday. I think that'll be no problem to this horse. And Slipway off 11 stone 6 over 3 mile 5.5 furlongs. I think it's got a real good chance against some, let's be honest, some pretty slow opponents. I'm not saying he's Nijinsky himself, but he's probably good enough off this handicap mark to prove that he's a stayer, a proper stayer, and a stayer with a little bit of turn of foot that can probably win a race of this calibre.
We've got over the Irish Sea, we've got a 2-day meeting at Punchestown where there's a a few stars unleashed. Ballyburn being the main event tomorrow. I mean, you're looking forward to seeing him?
I'm looking forward to seeing Ballyburn, very much so, but that 3-runner race for the Florida Pearl, dearie me. 3 runners, all trained by Gordon Elliott, all owned by Gigginstown, wearing the various different caps for Michael O'Leary. I'm not sure I would touch that race with a barge pole. I think that's another look and learn race just to see how that one goes. But Ballyburn, as you know, Scottish owned, and that's a real horse that we can all look forward to this season. Let's see how it does first time out. Again, not a betting race, but absolutely fascinating to see Ballyburn back at Punchestown this weekend. And of course, the big race on Sunday, Robert, which is almost as good, if not better, than the Betfair Chase.
Yeah, the John Durkin, possibly if they all were waiting to see what's going to stand its ground, but they'll stand their ground. I mean, this could be one of the best races outside the festival. I mean, fast or slow, Jim, he just seems to love it round Punchestown. What's your case for putting him up this weekend?
Yeah, I love fast or slow. I think he's a Gold Cup winner in waiting. Poor old JJ Slevin, and I'm not having a pop at him here because he has admitted it. He fell off fast or slow. He has admitted he fell off fast or slow in the Gold Cup. It was very embarrassing for him. I don't think that'll ever happen to him again. He's out injured at the moment, so he won't be riding this weekend. But fast or slow is always a this race as his target to come back on the build-up to Cheltenham second time around. I think he's good enough to win a Gold Cup. So obviously, I think if he's fitting well, he's good enough to win on Sunday, whatever the opposition. And of course, with the weather this weekend, Robert, we could end up where we had last weekend. We were talking about horses pulling out because the ground was too fast. We could end up this weekend with a raft of non-runners because the ground gets too soft, and they'll complain that it's rain on top of water ground, and we just have to suck it and see what comes out. But fast or slow for me on Sunday, and I think he's a Gold Cup hope going forward as well. And hopefully JJ Slevin will be back riding soon.
We've also got another Grade 1 with the Morgiana at Punchestown. Stateman making his comeback, Lossiemouth, brighter days ahead. I mean, that's going to be a fascinating contest, isn't it?
It really is. And Constitution Hill, I mean, I presume you saw that gallop at Newbury the other day. Not impressive at all. And the vibes around this horse, he's drifted in the market for the Champion Hurdle. The vibes are absolutely terrible. And if you look at the Champion Hurdle, the Champion Hurdler is the horse with all the form, Stateman. And at the moment, you would have to say he might have a clear run as long as he can get through Sunday, get through his Christmas engagement, get through his February engagement. He might well have a clear run all the way to Cheltenham again, because the vibes around Constitution Hill are not good at all. I'd love to see Stateman come back and prove that he is a champion hurdler on Sunday. I think he will, whatever the opposition. And as I say, the vibes around Constitution Hill, Stateman going forward, he's the champion hurdler and he's there to be deposed, Robert.
To your eye, what did you make of Constitution Hill's gallop at Newbury the other day?
To my eye, it didn't look like a proper gallop. It didn't look as if either horse was asked to do very much at all. But you could see, I mean, I think even the uneducated eye could see that Constitution Hill was not going well. Nico de Vaughnville was just asking him to quicken up, and he looked as if he was toiling, putting his best foot forward. The other horse is very good. I don't know if we did know it was Forgino beforehand, but we do now, and Forgino is a very good horse. So Forgino cantered all over him, but that did not look a good piece of work. I don't think they were asked to do too much, but it didn't look great. And I think the plan is that he'll school again on Saturday, and then maybe another piece of work next week. So could we be sitting here next weekend, Robert, talking about Constitution Hill being on the sidelines again? Well, we're going to find out in the next few days.
Yeah. Ascot, Jim puts up a nap in the paper every day. Your nap's at Ascot today, I believe, Jim. If you could just tell us what it is and your rationale for picking it.
Yeah, I've gone to Ascot, Robert. It's a horse called Regarde, if we're going to give it the correct pronunciation. It's trained by Jamie Snowden, ridden by Gavin Sheehan. It runs in the 3:15 at Ascot today. It's over 3 miles. If the going does get a little bit softer as the day progresses, I don't think that'll be any problem to this horse at all. It's up £6 for winning at Kempton last time, but if you do have time to watch the video of that Kempton race before Ascot this afternoon, he won very, very well. I mean, Gavin Sheehan got a really good tune out of him after the last, quickened up really nicely. I think with these big chasers, £6 is neither here nor there. I don't think that'll be any problem for him to defy this afternoon. It's not a bad race. It's a slightly better race than it was at Kempton, even though it's the same Class 4. But I think Regarde, round about the 4-1 mark, that's the best bet of the day today.
Thanks, Jim. A pleasure. And you can read Jim's column in the paper on a Thursday and a Sunday, where he puts up plenty of winners every single week. And good luck with your bets this weekend. Cheers.
Thanks, Robert.
Cheers.